I want to talk to you about a book that has been one of the most influential books in the history of Western culture and that very few people even know exists or read today. This book is written in the 12th century between 1184 and 1186 by a man we know as Andrew the Chaplain, Andreas Capellanus, and he gave it the simple title De Amore, concerning love. But it's usually translated into English with the title of Courtly Love. Now, what does this book claim to be? It claims to be a handbook that's addressed to a young man who has recently fallen in love and has asked for advice from our Andrew about how to manage the affairs of love. Andrew expresses dismay that the young man has given himself over to the ways of loving and then goes on to describe for him the ins and outs of romantic relationships. The book is divided into 3 books. In the first book, he talks about the details of what love is, how it arises, what types of things cause love to increase, what types of things cause love to decrease, all of that kind of stuff. In book 2, he goes on to talk about, he offers a series of dialogues and strategies that are essentially a how-to manual for wooing. The dialogues are structured on social class. So it tells you, okay, if you're a member of the upper nobility and you were trying to gain the affections of a member of the lower nobility, this is how you would do it. And if it's vice versa, this is how you would do it, and so on. And it goes all the way down and considers every possible combination of social classes that might be involved in the relationship. As I said, a lot of them are dialogues. They're fun. They're interesting. And it's very practical. The third book is a moral and theological condemnation of the type of love he's been describing in the first 2 books. This has caused scholars a lot of consternation. They think, well, okay, so what is he trying to do? What was he hoping to do with this book? Is it that what we have in book 3 is the sort of perfunctory, I don't want to get in trouble with the church, and so I'm going to tack this on here, even though we all know that, wink, wink, the first 2 books are what I really think. Scholarly opinion has shifted quite a bit on this. In the 20th century, C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Allegory of Love, in which he argued that Andreas's book was intended to be taken very seriously, and was in fact taken very seriously. Since then, scholarship has kind of swung the other way and said, no, it's parody, it's all a joke, it's all a game. He knows it's a game. He expects everyone reading it to know that it's just a game. There's a moderate position, which I think is where I find myself, which is that I think that he is describing the way love is actually starting to take place at courts, specifically at a couple of courts that we'll circle back around to talk about in a second. And so he is, in fact, giving Walter, who's the person the book is addressed to, he is giving him what he asked for, which is, hey, how does love work? I'm a nobleman, I'm hanging out in the court, what can I expect to see in the love realm, and how should all these things fit together? But I think there's also a sense in which our Andrew the Chaplain is pushing back on that, maybe poking some fun at that and saying that there's problems with this way of loving as well. We don't know for sure what it was he tried to do. What we do know is that it came to be taken very seriously, and it would be nothing short of a revolution in how we love in the West. Before getting to that, I want to say a little bit more about him. We don't know much about his life at all, but he seems to have been associated with the court of Marie of Champagne. Marie was the daughter of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Eleanor of Aquitaine was the granddaughter of the first French love poet, troubadour. So her family had been supporting the arts for a couple of generations, and particularly this new form of art that really idealized the woman, elevated the woman and placed her on a pedestal, went over the top in praise of her and what I would do for her and all these other sorts of things, created what would come to be called by some writers the religion of love. Eleanor herself, who was first the wife of the King of France and later the wife of the King of England, wielded an immense amount of power in those 2 nations, and also at various times enjoyed a great amount of autonomy. And she was able to build a court around her that celebrated the arts, that drew great artists from all over Europe, and she established a culture of loving that is what we see described in this book. Her daughter Marie also set up a court in a similar sort of way to her mother, attracted many artists, and Marie was very active not only in asking the artists to write these types of works, but even in directing them on what to do. It's presumed that she had a pretty strong hand in this book that we're talking about here, The Art of Courtly Love. And also, Chrétien de Troyes, one of the great, the author of the first great Arthurian romances, at least one of his romances, the one that introduces the character of Lancelot, was given to him by Marie de France, and she told him how she wanted it to go. And so this Marie, not Marie de France, Marie de Champagne, there's another Marie de France out there. This Marie de Champagne, she probably is the inventor of the character of Lancelot, and as one of the reasons why all of this courtly love stuff that Andrew is talking about gets applied in the Arthurian tradition. Now, this book, why do I say that it's so important? If no one's heard of it, or very few people have heard of it, and people aren't reading it or teaching it, where do I get off saying that it's so important? Well, this book completely changed how we understand romantic love in the West. It's an absolute revolution. Now, Andreas Capellanus did not invent courtly love. He's just, whether advertently or inadvertently, he became one of the major pieces in its dissemination. This book was wildly popular and would be copied over and over and over again and referred to over and over and over again. And in fact, when you hear talk in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and so forth about loving by the book, this is the book they mean. This new way of loving, this new form of romance, which would be very familiar, you'll see in a bit, is very familiar to us as moderns. It would ultimately to bring down the system of arranged marriages in Europe, because now when people say they want to marry for love, these are the stories, this is the book they have in mind as what's desirable, what they should be looking for, rather than whatever the other things are that they might have married for before that. This book is responsible for the birth of modern ideals of romance, and it is still the largest single influence on how we think about love to this day. That new Western idea of romance has spread all over the world, and you see it toppling old ideals of romance and marriage in countries in the Far East and in Africa and things like this, because everyone is moving towards this model. And this book was the most important single book in spreading that information. Now, it is part of a constellation of works. Chrétien de Troyes, whom I mentioned earlier, who wrote those Arthurian romances, he was at Marie de Champagne's court with Andrew the chaplain, and he wrote his romances about 10 years before Andrew wrote this book. So Andrew is looking at the work that Chrétien has done when he writes this book. And yes, the Chrétien romances are wildly popular, and they go all over the place as well. And by linking courtly love to King Arthur's court, they do a lot for spreading this thing around. But there's a real sense in which, in succeeding centuries, people keep coming back to this book, to Capellanus' book, and saying, yeah, okay, but if you want to know the treatise on how all this is supposed to go, this is the book that tells you that. So, what is courtly love as he sees it? Well, Andrew comes up with 31 rules that govern love, and he says that they've been given by the god of love, Cupid himself, and they've been commanded for all followers of love. So, if you want to be a good lover, these are the rules that you have to follow. Now, what I'm going to do as I present them to you is, for some of them, not for all of them, but for some of them, I'm going to mention some contemporary songs that express exactly the sentiment that the rule in question expresses. You can do it for every one of them, and I'll give you my complete list down below. But I'll just highlight a few things to show you how contemporary this list still is. This is not the way people thought about love before this explosion of this new revolution of courtly love. The first rule is that marriage is not a proper cause to be excused from love. Marriage doesn't excuse you from love. What he means by that is, if you meet someone and you would be interested in becoming their lover, but they're married, they can't allege their marriage as an excuse why they're unavailable to you. Right? To us, today, we look at that and we think, oh, he means that, just because you're married doesn't mean you can't fall in love with each other. That is not what he's saying, actually, in context. What he's saying is, okay, just because the lady happens to be married doesn't mean that all possibility of love is cut off. Remember, this is going into a society in which marriage and love did not necessarily go together. They did sometimes. I'm not saying they never did, but they didn't necessarily. And especially among the nobility, which is what this is all about. Courtly love means love as it's being done in the noble courts, in the royal courts and whatnot. For them, a lot of the time, marriage had nothing to do with love. It was primarily about political alliance or something along those lines. The second rule is that one who is not full of zeal or jealousy is not able to love. The Latin word used here kind of means both zealous and jealous. I think that what he really means by it is the idea of the passion, the big energy. There's going to be more on jealousy later. Here in the beginning of the rules, I think what he's talking about is that type of passion that we've come to associate with romance today. Now, I said that marriage is no excuse to be bound from love, or rather Andrew said that. The third rule is that no one is able to be bound by a double love. That means you can't love two people at the same time. You probably don't really love either one if you love two at the same time. This is further proof that marriage one is not primarily saying you can have love in marriage. It's saying, yeah, just because she's married, she's probably not in love anyway. But the fear would be that since you're married, but you don't love your spouse, that's it. You're done with love. There's no hope for you. And the rules of love say, no. Actually, you're still okay. A good song that represents this is Rihanna's song Unfaithful, which deals precisely with this notion of trying to love two people and the damage that brings about for the relationship. Rule number 4, love is always either increasing or decreasing. And this is a very contemporary attitude as well. We have this notion of falling in love and falling out of love, and we talk about the spark and the magic, and the spark is gone, the magic has been lost, all of that kind of stuff. Love is being defined as the passionate, zealous feeling, and it's always either growing stronger, or if it's failing to grow stronger, that's because it's already starting to die. And so it doesn't really lend itself to lifelong faithful relationships, because it's really placing all the emphasis on those feelings, those experiences, and particularly the experiences at the beginning of love, which is what we glorify in our movies, in our romantic comedies, in our romantic novels. That's what our culture delights in, is the experience of new love, which is one of the reasons we have so much trouble with faithfulness in our culture. Rule number 5, that which a lover receives from an unwilling beloved has no relish. This is a very nice rule. It's essentially the anti-rape rule, but that's and the idea is that it has to be a free gift on both parts. You want to be loved in return. You don't just want to force the other person. I think that Respect by Aretha Franklin is a good contemporary analog to this rule. Rule number 6 says that a man is not really accustomed to love until he has reached puberty. And this is kind of an uninteresting one at one level, because it doesn't really say a whole lot. I've grown up now, I don't need that rule anymore. But it's actually incredibly important for understanding just what the author means by love. Love is being understood here as sexual love. And so a boy who has not yet reached the age of puberty is right out. He's excluded from the realm of love because he's not able to do the duties of love. And in this literature, the sexual act is referred to as a duty of love. Rule number 7, a 2-year widowhood for a dead lover is prescribed on the surviving lover. You show the strength of the love that you had by mourning for the one who has passed for 2 years. And I think of Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On. Rule number 8, no one ought to be deprived of love without very good reason. You have a right to love, as it were, and nothing ought to come in the way of that unless it's really, really important. Rule number 9, no one is able to love except the one who is compelled by the persuasion of love. Love awakens love, but it doesn't just awaken love, it compels love. And the way you see this play out in the stories, and you can recognize this even in something like Gawain and the Green Knight, where Sir Bertilac's lady, who is trying to seduce Gawain, she's reproaching him for not responding to her advances, because according to courtesy, which is a way of saying courtliness, or if you want to be courteous, which is to be courtly, where that means to act in this sort of a way, Gawain has an obligation to respond. He's not got another lady, and she is offering love, and so he sort of has an obligation to respond to that. And you see that time and time again in the medieval stories, that the man or the woman, usually the man, is so greatly in love and offers, and over time he just shows and shows and shows how much he's in love, and it just wears down her resistance, and she recognizes that love, and it causes her to love him in return. Rule number 10, love is always accustomed to be exiled from the house of avarice. Let me say that differently. Love and greed don't go together. The lover's got to be generous, open-handed. The most important thing in his life is supposed to be his beloved, not his money. And Madonna's Material Girl nicely treats this opposition, where she is, the whole point of that song is, she's not really that interested in the romantic stuff that the boys are offering her. She's all about the money. And what she's saying is, I can't enter into the religion of love because I'm too devoted to money to do that. Rule number 11, and this is a funny one. It's not suitable to love someone you would be ashamed to marry. That's really funny, because the rules not only don't expect you to marry the person, they presume you're not going to marry the person. So it's not about making sure that you don't wind up married to someone shameful. It's rather just saying, if she's not the kind of person, or if he's not the kind of person you could get married to in the society you live in, then they're not a good object for your love. And why the reason why this doesn't aim at marriage is going to become a little bit clearer later in a couple of rules here. Rule 12 says, the true lover desires the embraces of no one except his beloved. So it's not about as many women as possible or multiple women. It's about being really faithful to the one woman that is your beloved, or the one man who is your beloved. And this is where the song like Journey's Faithfully is really appropriate. Now, Rule 13 is one of the most important of all the rules, and it makes sense of what I've been saying about marriage all along. It says, love is rarely accustomed to endure being made public. Love almost never survives being publicly known. It has to be kept secret. And one of the reasons why that's the case is because in this court, a lot of the ladies are married to important men, and if people find out that you are having an affair with them, it's going to end in death for perhaps multiple of the people involved. That's not how marriage is. Marriage is publicly proclaimed from the church, and everyone knows it, and it's celebrated together. We're not talking about married love here. There's a really good song by a band called Little Mix, a secret love song, that really nails this quite well. Rule 14 says that easy access renders love contemptible. Difficult access makes it to be considered more dear. Think about something like Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. This notion of, I would climb any mountain, I would cross any ocean, I would go through any valley to get to your love. We have so many songs that share this idea. And this is part of that all comes out of the notion of the lady sending the knight on a quest to prove that he loves her, to show how great his love for her is. Or maybe he's going into a tournament and he wants to wear her favor, and she says, okay, you can do that, but only if you handicap yourself in this particular way. And he does it, and he gets really beat up and nearly killed, and then she knows how greatly he loves her. Rule 15. Every lover grows pale in the presence of his beloved. Right? Oh, you start to, you lose all the color, all that sort of a thing. The way they thought that happened was they felt that the blood was actually rushing to your heart, and so all the blood is being sucked out of your face and drawn down to your heart, and that's why your face grows pale. Rule 16 says the heart of the lover trembles upon suddenly seeing the beloved. This is a very important part of how we think about love today. You see someone across the room, and your heart flutters, and your knees grow weak. There's a song by French Affair called My Heart Goes Boom, which is exactly this idea. This is where this comes from. Rule 17. New love drives out old. The example that comes to mind most quickly for me is the opening of Romeo and Juliet. At the beginning of the play, he's in love with Rosamund, not Juliet. And he's talking about Rosamund, and he's driving the boys crazy, and they're complaining about how Romeo is always Rosamund this, Rosamund that. And he sees Juliet, and he says, oh, did I love before? Oh, forswear it. Right? That's it. I completely deny that was love. This is love. Juliet completely banishes all thoughts of Rosamond from his head instantly, the moment he lays eyes on her. This is also used as advice in medieval literature when someone is love sick. That is to say, they are suffering because of love, as we'll see a bit in a moment. Then you say to them, hey, cheer up, bud. I understand you can't have the girl that you want, but new love drives out old, so let's go find someone else. It's the medieval version and the origin of the expression, there's other fish in the sea. Rule 18 says, integrity alone makes someone worthy of love. The most important thing about your beloved is that they be of good character. Not how beautiful they are, not how rich they are, all these other, those are bonuses. But the most important thing is who they are on the inside. It's kind of funny when the person you're falling in love with is married to somebody else and you're going to be initiating an adulterous affair with them, but never mind that for now. Rule 19, if love diminishes, it quickly fails and rarely recovers. So you've constantly got to be keeping it going, one-upping yourself and always, pouring on the romance, because the moment it starts to slip, it tends to die and it almost never comes back after that. Rule 20, the one full of love is always full of fear. Fear of what? Fear that he's going to be betrayed, that his lover is going to go off with somebody else. Every breath you take by the police might be an example of this. Rule 21, the affection of the beloved is always increased by true jealousy. So when if you and I are in love, and I see that you're jealous of me, right? I look at someone and you think, were you checking her out? Is that what's going on there? That jealousy that you show is a sign to me of how great your love is. Rule 22 is very similar. The affection and zeal of the beloved is increased by the perception of the suspicion of her lover. That is to say, when I see your suspicion that I'm interested in somebody else, that makes me love you more and more interested in the relationship. And so what you're doing is you're weaponizing jealousy as a means of progressing love, right? A lot of that stuff, the jealousy culture gets greatly heightened under this new way of loving. Rule 23, the one who is vexed by thoughts of love eats and sleeps less. There's a song by Clay Walker called I Can't Sleep. This trope of not being able to sleep, losing your appetite, being listless, it's ubiquitous in Western culture. But it gets its start right here. Rule 24, every act of the lover ends in thought of the beloved. Everything I do it for you, says Bryan Adams. And that love song, which was one of the anthems of my childhood, as I was learning what romance was, is a perfect expression of Rule 24. Rule 25, the true lover believes nothing good except what he thinks pleases the beloved. Right? Do you like this thing? I don't know. Do you like it? If you like it, I like it. If you don't like it, I don't like it. I'll only want to do the things that are going to make her happy or that are going to make him happy. And then in Rule 26, we get love is able to deny nothing to love. John Legend has a song called All of Me that I think expresses this quite well. We see this quite frequently. If you love someone, you'll do anything for them. I would do anything for love. I can't deny anything to you because of the love that we share. You see why they call this a religion of love. It begins to make the sort of all-encompassing demands that had previously been reserved for gods. Rule 27 says the lover is not able to get enough of the solaces of the beloved, and I can't even list all of the possible songs here. I mean, I can't get enough of Your Love Babe by Barry White. I can't get enough of You Baby by Smash Mouth. I just can't get enough by Depeche Mode. It's a very, very common theme of our love songs. Rule 28 says even a small sinister occasion forces the lover to suspect the beloved. It doesn't take much, just a glance, and you're like, are you with her? What's going on there? What's happening? What are you doing behind my back? Suspicious Minds by Elvis Presley expresses this. Rule 29, the one who is vexed by an excess of luxury is not accustomed to love. Okay, that's kind of weirdly stated. Let's make it more plain. If you're given over to partying and debauchery, having sex with lots and lots of different people, you can't love. because love requires the kind of single-hearted focus that won't leave space for all that stuff. You won't be interested in any of that stuff if you're in love. And if your heart is already given over to debauchery, then there's no possibility of true love finding a place in that. Think of all the stories we have of characters who are usually men who are rakes, who are villains, who just are very profligate and they're around town partying and all these things, and then they meet the one, and all of that stuff is over in an instant. Suddenly they want to be respectable, they want to be faithful because love has awoken something in them. That's that same opposition we're talking about here. You can do one or the other, but you can't have both. The true lover is detained without interruption by persistent imaginings of the beloved. Kylie Minogue has a song, "I Can't Get You Out of My Head," and that's the idea there. Lastly, nothing prohibits one woman from being loved by two men and one man by two women. Now, if you remember, way back in rule number, let's see, where was it? Way back in rule number, I haven't gone back yet. Back in rule number 3, it says that no one can be bound by double love. So how is it possible that you can't be bound by double love, but you can be loved by two people? Well, it's about active and passive. You can't love two people at the same time. But there's nothing that says that two people can't love you at the same time. Each one of them is loving one person. It just happens to be the same person. And so in that scenario, you're going to have to respond to their love, but you've got to pick one because you won't be able to love them both equally. This is the plot of Chaucer's The Knight's Tale. And there's a song by Brandy and Monica called "The Boy Is Mine," right, with women battling over possession, over the affections. We also see lots of things in our movies and our songs about two men vying for the affection of a common woman. It's a common trope. All of this stuff, it's the entire notion, what makes sense to us as the culture of romance, comes from this courtly love stuff. Courtly love was carried out by the courtiers, who were nobles, and knights. And the knights, the French word for knight is chevalier. And so the code of knighthood was called chevalerie or chivalry. And so we talk about chivalry in connection with romantic love. We're referencing this stuff. All of these rules again. It's deeply influential. It's completely changed the face of societal interactions and norms in the West. And that's why I say this book, The Art of Courtly Love by Andreas Capellanus, is one of the most important books in Western history if you want to understand the culture that we're living in today. If you enjoyed this, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel, give me a like, because we're going to be going through lots more important books in Western history and giving you a little introduction to why they're so important and what it was that they did for us.